Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Dayspring Discussions. I'm your host Sean McGahee, and this is a show where we talk about movies, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, comic books. If you geek out about it, we're going to talk about it. You can listen to Dayspring Discussions on iTunes, YouTube, Podomatic, and Patreon, and contact Dayspring Discussions on the Facebook group, Twitter account, and dayspringdiscussions@gmail.com. Well, happy Tuesday, everyone. Hope you all have your week started off great. This weekend, of course, was May the 4th, National Star Wars Day. So hope you guys got out, enjoyed some good Star Wars activities, maybe watched some Star Wars movies. The Saturday of, I actually worked, so I really didn't get to watch, too many Star Wars movies like I like to. But while I was at work, I had the TV turned on TBS, where they have the Star Wars marathon going on. So on Saturday, I kind of caught the end of Empire all the way through Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, and a little bit of Rogue One. And then on Sunday, I was at work again, but I had the TV again on TBS to where they were at the end of Episode 1, Episode 2, and Episode 3. So I really didn't get to watch it, of course, obviously, because I was at work and I was busy. But there were moments where my eyes caught Star Wars. And then Sunday night, I got home, watched a couple episodes of Clone Wars, and sat down and watched The Phantom Menace. Of course, being the 20th anniversary of the film, we sat down and watched it. Tried to get my 6-year-old daughter to watch it, because I think that's the one she might like the most. She was a little fidgety. Towards the end there, she kind of settled down and watched it with us, but the beginning was a little rough. But anyway, guys, I'm going to talk a little Star Wars too, because we got some news that came out about that and the Journey to Rise of Skywalker. Of course, Spider-Man Far From Home trailer and Game of Thrones episode I'm going to get to in just a few minutes. But first, before I do anything, I feel like, given the fact that this show is an X-Men reference, I don't talk enough X-Men. So I'm going to take this opportunity to do that, because we are officially 1 month away from Dark Phoenix's release. X-Men Dark Phoenix, the final film in 20th Century Fox's X-Men universe. It's kind of bittersweet, is what it comes down to. Now, this film was supposed to come out back in November, actually. Got pushed back to February, then got pushed back again to June. They said, more time for reshoots and adding effects and all that stuff. And I'm okay, pushing a film back like that. If the filmmakers think it's going to make the film better, I'm okay with pushing it back. Everything I've heard about this film, or a lot of stuff I've heard about this film, makes it seem like it's not great, which very disappoints me and makes me a little sad. The X-Men 20th Century Fox films have kind of been a roller coaster. You had X-Men and X2, which were kind of an uphill good thing. X3 took a dip, along with the Wolverine origin film. You're slowly coming back up with First Class. You kind of reached the height, I think, with Days of Future Past. You dip a little bit with the second Wolverine film and X-Men Apocalypse, but then you go back up for Logan, and now we have Dark Phoenix, which there are some questions about the film. Understandably, from the trailer, I get it. And this is Dark Phoenix. This is 20th Century Fox's second attempt to tell the Dark Phoenix saga, which is the most infamous X-Men storyline. Now, one thing that's got me a little disappointed too is the fact that there have been reports that some of the reshoots that went on were taking the third act, or the final battle, from space down to a train heist, or on a train on Earth, which disappoints me, because Dark Phoenix, the Phoenix Saga in general, is a very cosmic storyline. And with these films, the 20th Century Fox X-Men films, they've always seemed to go smaller when they should go bigger. X-Men is crazy, okay? You've got time travel, you've got space, you've got, multiverses. There's all kinds of craziness that happen in X-Men comics, and they barely touch on some of that stuff in the movies. If they would just not be afraid to open the doors to all the craziness, they would have so many possibilities as to what they could do with these films. But we'll never know now, because now that Disney officially owns 20th Century Fox, everyone's kind of assumed, it's almost a guarantee, that we're going to get X-Men reboot. You're going to bring X-Men into the MCU, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that's a whole separate topic. So this is kind of the last of the X-Men films, which, if you think back, going back all the way, I believe it was 2000, when the first X-Men film came out, it's been a long time. And really, that first X-Men film, along with Blade and I think Spider-Man, that first Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire, are really responsible for the resurgence of the superhero genre and part of the boom that we got. I think those films kind of started it. Then you have Iron Man, Dark Knight, that kind of refined it. And of course, after Avengers, it just blew up, and it's still going strong. Obviously, with Endgame making $2 billion now and eyeing Avatar for the #1 box office film of all time. It's pretty amazing how the superhero and comic book genre has evolved. But as I was watching the John Campia's show yesterday, let's not forget, they're not all great, because the new Hellboy film was a total dud, going to cost the studio almost $100 million of loss, which kind of sucks. So just because you make a superhero film these days doesn't mean you're guaranteed to make money. But with Dark Phoenix, I want it to be good. You know, as an X-Men fan, as a fan of these characters, I want it to be good. But that's kind of, the next one I have my sights set on. I'll start rewatching some X-Men films here soon, I'm sure of it. Tickets haven't gone on sale yet. Spider-Man tickets went on sale yesterday. X-Men comes out almost a full month ahead of it, and they haven't gone on sale, but whatever, guys. So let me know what you think about Dark Phoenix. Are you excited, not excited, worried, not worried? How do you feel about the end of this era? I feel like I should do a separate show about it, given the fact that, it's X-Men and what X-Men has meant to the superhero film genre. I might, do a little something before Dark Phoenix comes out, and touch on that. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for that. So let's move on, because I got a lot more stuff to talk about, and I've talked way too much just about that. Star Wars, like I said, I was going to talk a little bit about that. Now, with their new films and the new trilogy, Lucasfilm has released kind of this series of books and comics and other things that are the Journey to. They had the Journey to The Force Awakens, they had a Journey to The Last Jedi, and now they recently announced the Journey to The Rise of Skywalker. Lisa, my wife, and I have had a couple issues, especially with this last one, the Journey to The Last Jedi. Mainly because a lot of the stuff that, they wanted you to read to get ready for The Last Jedi was kind of pointless. The most, I think, being the Phasma novel. And I think my wife, Lisa, was the most disappointed at that, because she enjoyed the book so much, and then Phasma went out like a little bitch. Not even in the film. The stuff that was in the book had no relevancy to anything in The Last Jedi. Now, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which was a great one by Claudia Gray, that had a little bit to do, mainly because it introduced us to Holdo, which is a completely different person in the film, and also Crate, which kind of was one of the original bases for the rebellion during their first early days when they decided to fight the Empire. And that's really what it sets up in reference to The Last Jedi, but otherwise not a lot to do with it. So when I see that they're coming out with Journey to The Rise of Skywalker, I think there's a little bitter taste in my mouth. I know there's definitely a bitter taste in Lisa's mouth as far as it goes, but I'm still going to do it. Now, recently, I finished Master and Apprentice, the Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon book, or audiobook is what I did, and I enjoyed it, by Claudia Gray again, favorite current Star Wars author. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relationships, kind of the aspect of that. Right now, I'm right in the middle of Dooku Lost, the newest one, which is the audio drama. It's a little different how they do it, because it's just mainly a lot of dialogue, and any explanation is internal monologues of the characters. But it's interesting to explore the character of Dooku. I just passed the part where Yoda picked Dooku as his apprentice, and I've never been a big Count Dooku fan, but I think it'll be interesting to explore the character more and maybe give a better insight to the Dooku character. But going back to these, the number one book that probably is going to be the most to read is going to be this Resistance Reborn. And the description is, quote, in this Journey to Star Wars Rise of Skywalker novel, Poe Dameron, General Leia Organa, Rey, and Finn must struggle to rebuild the Resistance after defeat at the hands of the First Order in Star Wars The Last Jedi. The book's set to come out in November 12th, which is almost like about a month or so before the film comes out. Now with this, you kind of get the idea that Rise of Skywalker is going to be set a little further back than, say, between Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, because those were almost immediately together, which I'm fine with. Some people had a problem with, I'm fine with. So, time is going to pass between Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I get it. I'm curious, of course, what the character is doing, mainly with Rey. I want to know how she's, taking those books and learning more, and what kind of her status is going to be at the beginning of The Rise of Skywalker. Is she going to be a badass Jedi? Kind of like, when you look at Luke going from Empire to Return of the Jedi, how much he had grown as a Jedi. I think we see kind of that transition with Rey in this one. There's a couple other books coming out. There's Force Collector, which honestly I don't think sounds that great. You got Allegiance. Now this one's interesting. It's a Marvel comic miniseries, and it says, quote, on the run since the destruction of Starkiller Base, General Leia and the remaining handful of Resistance have barely managed to survive, much less strike back against the superior forces of the First Order. Running low on options, Leia decides to reach out to her former allies, the Mon Calamari, whose shipyards once powered the Rebel Alliance. That one could be a little interesting. It's, I think it's probably Marvel Comics, like, big, journey to the Rise of Skywalker comic. Mon Calamari, of course, was Admiral Akbar's species, and Admiral, what's his name from Rogue One? I forget, but he was a great guy too. You got a couple other things that are coming up between now and then. It's a couple kids things. Nothing really seems great. There is a middle grade novel called Spark of Resistance. When a distress plea goes out from the isolated planet Minfar, Resistance heroes Rey, Poe, and Rose hear the call. Together they will face down the First Order battalion, terrifying flying creatures, and a weapon that could change the course of the war. Could be interesting, possibly. And then I'm going through here, just kind of flipping through. The pop-up book sounds cool, but that's neither here nor there. Art of Skywalker. That book looks really cool just because of the art of it, really. There's that. And, of course, you have the Rise of Skywalker novel and all that other stuff. So, anyway, we got some stuff coming on the horizon before Rise of Skywalker. Whether it'll be as relevant as, say, the Last Jedi stuff or the Force Awakens stuff wasn't, we'll just have to wait and see. So, but fire back, guys, of course. Let me know if you plan on checking out any of the Journey to the Rise of Skywalker stuff. And also, of course, Master Apprentice, Dooku Lost, any of the recent Star Wars novels. Fire back on the social media groups and Gmail account. I'd love to talk about it. Okay, guys, now it's time for the actual main topics. And, of course, I'm running really far behind, but that's how it's going to be. So, Spider-Man Far From Home. A new trailer was released yesterday morning. The film is set to come out July 2nd, directed by John Watts, who directed Spider-Man Homecoming. And it was last week, I think, or so, the directors of Endgame, the Russo brothers, was on some show, and they talked about how Monday Endgame spoilers are free game. Pretty much like, people are trying to, wait and not go online till they see the film, but on Monday it's free game. And it seemed a little weird, maybe because no director's ever said that, but now we understand why they said it, because you have this Spider-Man Far From Home trailer that pretty much gives away a lot of spoilers of the end of Avengers Endgame. So it makes sense. So really, I think you could say that spoilers for Endgame are all free game at this point, on talk shows and the internet, memes, GIFs, whatever you're doing. I think it's all pretty much out in the open. And plus, the films have been out for over 2 weeks now, or over about a week and a half. So if you haven't seen it, you might not care too much if it gets spoiled for you. But anyway, this film set, of course, after the events of Avengers Endgame. There was some kind of talk if it might be a prequel to Endgame and Infinity War, but this kind of makes it definitive. And when I talked with Lisa about this film at the end of our Avengers Endgame review, I was still thinking, based off the first trailer, it still might be a prequel. He wasn't wearing his Iron Spider costume. All of his friends, were still there, even though he was gone for 5 years. But it all gets explained. Pretty much all of his friends were dusted as well. And we learned from director John Watts that also Aunt May was dusted too. So there's that. And they all come back 5 years later, and they all have to go back to high school, but looks like they're going on a trip. Now, Peter himself is still wearing the Iron Spider costume, which is a great tribute to his mentor, Tony Stark, and he's kind of living in the shadow of it. I think this is going to be a major plot point in the film where, of course, Tony Stark was his mentor. Tony saw something in Peter as kind of being almost a predecessor with how smart he is and how inventive he is, where it could be someone who takes his place. Now, even in this trailer, there is that line where I think it's Happy that says, no, it's Peter that says, the world needs another Iron Man, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I can't remember it directly. But I think one of the things Peter's going to have to learn in this film is maybe he wants to try to be the next Iron Man, but of course he needs to be Spider-Man, if you get what I'm saying. So he can be Spider-Man and be like Iron Man. I think it's going to be one of the lessons in this story. And then there's the whole Nick Fury angle where he has now decided to recruit Peter to help him out. And in this trailer, we meet Jake Gyllenhaal's character, going to be Mysterio, but we know Mysterio is a villain. So what's going on with that? We all know there's going to be some kind of double cross. But Peter, of course, having lost his mentor, I think is going to look at this guy, this character, as kind of a replacement mentor or even just friend. Perhaps someone who appears to know more than what Peter does. So he kind of latches onto him for guidance, perhaps. And it's going to bite him in the ass. So in this trailer, we're made to believe that Mysterio's character, Jake Gyllenhaal, is from another dimension. In the comic book world and superhero genre, that's not unheard of. That's fine. And the fact that we, have reshaped reality at least twice now with Infinity War and Endgame, it makes sense. Messing with reality, messing with time and space, stuff like that happens. A rip in reality in a time-space continuum. It's believable, I guess you would say. But if anyone knows the Mysterio character, knows that his whole deal is he creates illusions to deceive people. And that's in the comics how he became a great thief. These creatures that pop up, let's say, for instance, they're not real. They're just ways of him making himself look good. Maybe there is not a rip in reality. There could be, but I'm willing to bet they're not, and it's all part of a prank by him to make himself look good. Whether he's planning some big heist or whatever, and it's all part of the plan, I don't know, but obviously I don't trust Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, I trust Jake Gyllenhaal because he's a great actor, but I don't trust his character, and I think he's a good enough actor to deceive us all and believe in the character, and then make that turn, and the audience will feel it just as bad as when Peter feels it. And I love, of course, Nick Fury, the line where Peter's like, I'm just a friendly neighbor of Spider-Man. And Nick Fury's like, bitch, please, you've been to space, Getting that sense of, Peter, you're more than just what you are. You can be more than just save the neighborhood. You can help save the world, which is what, again, feeds in the whole motif of the new Iron Man, the world needing another Iron Man. Whether Peter's going to be that, I don't think he will, but it's something he's got to figure out how to be a bigger hero than what he is. But let's just take a minute and think about this multiverse thing too. Say it is real. So immediately when I first watched the trailer, when the word multiverse came up, my first thought was Miles Morales, okay? Obviously, he comes from another world. In the comics, it's the Ultimate Universe. And then we've talked, in Endgame about splintered realities, about creating other timelines, other realities. So it's a possibility, I think. Whether the general audience is ready for something like that, I mean, we just went through this whole time travel crazy adventure, and even myself, I'm trying to figure out, how it logically makes sense. Obviously, it's time travel, so it doesn't make logical sense, but, make it seem like it's okay, like it fits, I guess you would say. Multiverses. Well, there's another little piece that we could throw in there, known as X-Men and Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four, well known for exploring other worlds, space, realities, the negative zone, all that stuff. So that could be a possibility. And of course, X-Men. I always thought the easiest way to bring in mutants is when reality gets changed, you bring in mutants that way. Now, of course, Endgame, Far From Home, and films after that, Kevin Feige already said he's had the next 5 years of the MCU planned out without the X-Men and Fantastic Four because the deal wasn't actually done yet. Whether I believe that, I know Kevin Feige has a plan. I know he has it planned out, and I know that in the long term of being in charge of Marvel Studios and with all the possibilities of X-Men and Fantastic Four coming back into the Marvel Studios fold, he had to have think about it, okay? Now, whether it includes his 5-year plan, he says it really doesn't. I don't know if I 100% believe him, but either way, and Kevin Feige I trust, so whatever he has planned for the MCU, I'm okay with. Sticking with alternate realities and all that stuff, the elementals, as they're being called. One's water, one's kind of sandish. I'm thinking Hydro Man and Sandman. That's kind of where I'm thinking with this. We've already got Vulture. We got Mysterio. We got those two. Shocker. You throw in one more guy, say, for the third Spider-Man film, like, say, Doc Ock. You've got yourself a Sinister Six. I'll throw that out there. But this movie looks interesting. I think we're going to deal a lot with kind of post-Endgame, the set of what the world is like. I want, Peter and his friends, since they were all dusted, I really want them to deal with kind of the trauma of coming back to this world after having been gone. It's almost like kind of a Captain America effect, I guess you would say, only not as long. Cap was in the ice for 70 years. He comes out, everyone he knows is either old or dead. This isn't that long, but something like that can really put a strain not only on them, but also the people they knew, like all their friends that weren't snapped already went through high school and are in college by now. So there's an aftermath here of the events of the snap and the events of Endgame and Infinity War, and I just want to feel it. I just want to see what it's like, not only through Peter's eyes, but also through his friend's eyes as well. Just to give that character arc something emotional that we can latch on to just make us enjoy the film more. But I did enjoy the trailer, of course. I'm very now more interested than ever, given the fact that we know it's not just a solo Spider-Man film, but this is really kind of the aftermath of Endgame and, tying up all the loose ends, so to speak, of what, is possibly going to happen in the future too. Because as of right now, we have no official as to what's next after Endgame. We have ideas as far as Guardians 3, Black Widow, Doctor Strange, Black Panther sequels, but nothing is definitive as far as what comes next. So maybe after Far From Home, we're going to get some answers. Maybe in the post-credit scene, we'll get some answers. But either way, guys, of course, hop online. Let me know what you think about the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Okay, guys, well, I am out of time, but I gotta talk Game of Thrones, okay? I didn't really talk too much about the last episode, the Battle of Winterfell, so I wanted to talk about this episode because now we officially have only 2 episodes left of Game of Thrones. It's a little sad, to say the least. Some people, of course, are complaining. There's the whole darkness thing about the last episode where the Battle of Winterfell, you can see a lot. And of course, the streaming rate and basically how it took away the experience. Whatever. Now people are complaining about the Starbucks cup. Okay, you barely saw it. Okay, I didn't see it until someone pointed it out to me. And honestly, when I go back and watch that scene again, I'll probably totally forget about it and won't even think about it, for the rest of the time. Whatever, okay? let's talk about the actual story. The Battle of Winterfell, okay, it was a good episode. It was a great battle. I was a bit disappointed that more important characters didn't die. Just to throw it out there, Samuel Tarly, I'm sorry, man. He should have been dead. Sam was right in the thick of it, has no idea how to fight, and he should have been dead. Okay? That's just the reality of it. And sure, people died, but if you took, say, the top 5 most important characters in Game of Thrones, the top 5 most important characters that were there, none of them died. Which, maybe they're saving that for the finale. Understandable, but in a big battle, chaos like that, I felt like, we should have had at least one of the top 5 characters bite. Moving on to this week's episode, I enjoyed so much more than the Battle of Winterfell, okay? Because this episode, while not a lot happened as far as action-wise, that's the best part about it, is because it's so character-centered, dealing with relationships and progressing the story along. This whole big thing about Game of Thrones was, the dead were coming. The Night King was coming. And he came to Winterfell. And he killed a lot of people. And it was all dire and all that stuff. We concluded that, okay? But now we're back to what is the true Game of Thrones. The battle for the Iron Throne. Which, again, it's called Game of Thrones, okay? And we're battling for the throne of Westeros. So yes, we've taken out the Night King. Now we have to deal with taking out Cersei or Dany, depending on which way you sit on this whole issue. But I enjoyed this episode so much more. Some of kind of the highlights, of course, was Jon and Dany, them dealing with kind of the aftermath, not of the battle really, but of, the revelation that he is part Targaryen, allegedly has a greater claim to the throne, which I don't believe at all, actually. If Dany should feel threatened by anyone, it's Gendry, who she just officially named a Baratheon, because the Targaryens were overruled. I try to tell people this, okay? The Targaryens were overruled by the Baratheons. So it's Baratheon rule. That's why Cersei is sitting on the throne, because she's technically still married to Robert. And Gendry is the last true son of Robert Baratheon, who was the king, so he has a bigger claim, I think, than Jon does. Why people are like, oh, Jon does? No. Jon is obviously a great guy, great war hero, and, would probably make a good king because he doesn't want to be king. That's the best leaders. The best leaders are the ones who really don't want the power. So I hate the whole thing they're talking about how, Jon has a bigger claim. He doesn't, okay? He works technically for Dany. Dany's the one after the throne. If Dany wins the throne, she's the queen. That's just how it goes, guys. I'm sorry, but that's the way it makes sense to me, is how it should be. But of course, Dany's going a little crazy. She's starting to become perhaps a little bit of a mad queen. Really jealousy, I think, is what it is for Jon, and the way people look at her, the way the Northerners think about him over her, even though without her and her army, they'd all be dead. And, they appreciate it, but they don't look at her the same way they look at Jon, and it's starting to get to her. Plus, in this episode, she lost one of her dragons, which sucks. So now her power is diminishing, really, and Cersei sees that. And then, of course, she loses her best friend, which was so sad. I mean, it was a lot more gut-wrenching than losing anyone in last week's episode, okay? Because all those people that we lost in last week's episode were the Expendables, okay? Those are the people we really didn't care about. Jorah, yeah, great guy, but come on, you knew he was always going to go down defending Dany. You saw it coming, okay? But Missandei, who is this sweet, lovable girl who is so hot, and she loves Grey Worm, and they're going to go away together after the war and live happily ever after. And as soon as, she got captured, you knew it was all done. I want to know Grey Worm's state of mind now. I want to know what Grey Worm's going to do now in between, now and then, what his status is. Speaking of statuses, Jamie and Brienne. You knew that was coming. You knew their hookup was coming. And Jamie, leaving her crying to go back to King's Landing, it's not because he's still, I think, addicted to Cersei. It's the fact that he now knows what he has to do. And I said a while back that I feel like Jamie is going to be the Queen Slayer. He's going to have to kill Cersei, someone who he's pledged allegiance to this entire show. The reason why he does almost anything was because of his love for Cersei. And now he loves someone else. He has a good heart now. So he's going to, I think, go and, take out Cersei. I think it's what's going to have to happen. One of my favorite scenes, of course, with one of my favorite characters was Bronn. What's not to love about the Bronn character? And I love it. He's sitting there with Jaime and Tyrion, the two guys he's pretty much worked for the entire series, and, thinking that he's going to kill them. I love Bronn. Anything with Bronn. Give me more Bronn. I hope he comes back again in this series. Hopefully at the end, coming to hopefully fight and defend Jaime and or Tyrion. Maybe even dying for them. Could be a possibility. Speaking of characters I'm going to miss, Tormund. Jon is saying all his goodbyes at Winterfell because he's going to ride south. Tormund says he's going to take the wildlings and head back to the true north. Of course, the White Walkers are gone. The dead is gone. So it's pretty much safe for them now, which is understandable. He says goodbye to Sam and Gilly. Whether we're going to see them again or not, I think maybe not till the very end. And, of course, Ghost. So happy Ghost survived. A little sad. Jon, of course, like everyone else, didn't say bye to him. But now there are people screaming for a Ghost Tormund spinoff. Hey, I'd be down for that. Give me more of that. I'm totally okay with something like that. That'd be awesome. But that scene, too, is Jon saying goodbye to people he's closest to, Tormund and Sam, and technically Ghost. So it means that maybe things aren't going to go the best for Jon when he rides south. I mean, there's that saying where nothing really happens good when a Stark rides south, is what we've seen. So doesn't look good for Jon, even though he's got momentum on his side with Tyrion and their whole thing, possibly turning against Dany. I think Jon's still in trouble and might not survive the end of the series. At this point, I think both Jon and Dany are on the chopping block. I think they could both be gone, or one of them could be gone, and we could see someone else, maybe Tyrion, sit on the Iron Throne. I put more money on him, on Tyrion, than either Dany or Jon sitting on the throne at this point. Speaking of Starks, of course, the big Stark scene. Arya, what she's done in this is great. She's a character who, I haven't cared too much about, but her arc through, what she becomes is great. I love that her and the Hound are riding south. She's planning on killing Cersei. He's planning on killing the Mountain. That's going to be awesome to see. Whether he gets to, again, my money's still on Jaime being the one to kill Cersei, but you never know. And, of course, the whole reveal where Jon confides in his family. That's the type of person he is. And, of course, Sansa goes and blabs her mouth. Why? Because she is a student of Cersei. She knows what Tyrion will do with this information. She knows what it means. I really hated Sansa in this episode, honestly. What she's become. She's so distrusting of Dany, and it's it doesn't feed it. It doesn't feed Dany's sanity in her state of mind to have someone like Sansa pretty much being working against her. That line where Dany's like, the longer I wait, the stronger my enemies plan against me or something. And she looks at Sansa, and of course we all know what that means. But man, this episode, I'm sorry, I loved it more than the Battle of Winterfell. There were so many good character moments in lines like the ones I just mentioned that just fed into what we like about Game of Thrones, which is the characters and the relationships. It was just great. Now, we got 2 episodes left. It's the battle for King's Landing now. For the previews we got, whether the battle's going to be this next episode or the episode after that, I don't know. And anyone's on the chopping block, I think, at this point. Unless you're in Winterfell, you're on the chopping block in my book. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be sad to see go, but I have every faith based off, what we've gotten in the series, that it's going to have a good ending. If it does, it might be a little disappointing, but again, Benioff and Weiss haven't really disappointed me yet, and I don't think they will. So 2 episodes to go, guys. Of course, fire back. Let me know what you think. And that is going to be it for me today. Of course, I've gone over. That's just what it is. But I really wanted to talk, some Game of Thrones, some Spider-Man, Star Wars, all that stuff, of course. I'll be back hopefully Thursday with some more good stuff. Until then, you can find me Slim Dayspring 12 on Instagram and Twitter. Of course, fire back on any topics on the Facebook group and Twitter account, and Dayspring discussions at gmail.com. That's it. Go enjoy your week, guys, and until next time, may the Force be with us all.